not today.
Nothing personal.
This is going to go 90 minutes, isn't it? I have my tea because I'm losing my voice, so we can't go 90 minutes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the briefing. Everyone, each of you gets 20 minutes to yourself. I know. Matt's like, that's less than I normally have. That's not okay.
No.
Okay, a few things at the top, and then we'll go into questions. A travel update. Today, Secretary Kerry is en route to Geneva, Switzerland. Tomorrow, he will participate in a multilateral meeting among the United States, Ukraine, Russia, and the European Union to discuss the ongoing situation in and around Ukraine. He will also tomorrow meet with Joint Special Representative Brahimi to discuss Syria. There were some questions about why Special Envoy Rubenstein's on the plane with the Secretary, because he obviously doesn't work on Ukraine. So that is why they will have a meeting tomorrow in Geneva as well. And the second item at the top. We extend our deepest condolences to the loved ones of those who lost their lives on board the South Korean ferry, the Sewol. The United States is ready to provide any assistance needed. To that end, the U.S. 7th Fleet is ready to assist with the search and rescue efforts. The USS Bonhomme Richard has moved to the area to assist the government of South Korea with the search and rescue operations. I don't have more updates for you than that, but we are ready to help in any way we can. Obviously, it's a terrible, terrible tragedy there. Matt.
Bonhomme Richard or the Bonhomme Richard?
Oh, maybe it might be Richard. Excuse me, I can check.
I don't know. I don't have anything specific, but I do have somewhat of a general question about tomorrow's meeting. In the short term on Ukraine, am I characterizing what the administration wants correctly? You basically want the Russians to drop their annexation of Crimea, but you also want them to stop messing around in East and South Ukraine. Is there anything else the administration wants to see the Russians do in the immediate term?
Yep. So a couple points on that, and then I'll make a few, I guess, overall points about our goals for tomorrow, and then we can talk a little about Ukraine. So we want the Russian government, as you said, to pull its forces back from the border and from the Crimean region of Ukraine. We want it to halt the destabilizing actions you referred to and violation of Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty. And we want the Russians to call for armed separatist groups in eastern Ukraine to stand down and disarm. So those are a couple things we want the Russians to do. Tomorrow will be the first opportunity for Russia, Ukraine, the EU, and the United States to sit down at a table together and discuss a range of issues, including and probably most importantly, de-escalation, demobilization, the ongoing process of constitutional reform, and of course the lead up to the May 25th elections. I'd note that this is not the whole game. This is one part of it, and talk doesn't replace actions when it comes to what's happening on the ground, and that we will continue to prepare, as we've said, additional sanctions and other steps if we can't get some de-escalation here.
Okay, what are the biggest priorities for immediate action that you would like to see? Recognizing, even though I know you never will, at least publicly, that there's not a lot you can do about Crimea. Is it mainly the destabilization and the provocations in the south and east that you would like to see an immediate halt to?
We definitely want to see an immediate halt to that provocation. Absolutely.
Okay, so
that's certainly one thing. There's not. I don't know if I can provide a ranking order of if we have that for what we want them to do, but that's certainly at the top of the list.
Okay.
Yes.
So, but then in terms of media, I mean, do you regard the use of what you have called or what the Secretary has called the use of energy as a tool? Is that something that is more of a medium term, less of a short term thing for you, for you to want them to stop? It doesn't seem to be something that is an immediate, like, or right now issue that has to be resolved. Is that more of a medium term thing?
I think sort of, yes. I think what you're getting at here is obviously we don't want the Russians to use energy as a weapon.
Right.
We have been very clear about what they should and should not be doing when it comes to energy for Ukraine and Europe and other folks as well. But clearly, the presence of armed groups that the Russians are supporting in eastern Ukraine is an incredibly pressing priority. And energy we want them to not do any of this stuff, right? But in terms of pressing priorities, and what they can do to de-escalate, that involves what I said, the armed separatist groups, getting them to disarm, pulling back from eastern Ukraine, pulling back from Crimea. But the energy conversation is one we're going to keep having over many, many weeks here.
And then my last one, is there anything that the Ukrainian government, as you've just talked about what what you would like the Russians to do in the short and immediate term, is there anything that you're wanting the Ukrainian government to commit to or to do in that same immediate time frame? Or are they already doing what you think they should be doing?
Well, they're already doing what we think they should be doing. And just a couple logistical points, too, for tomorrow, or planning points, I guess. While he's in Geneva, he will also meet with EU High Representative Ashton, have a bilateral with the Ukrainian foreign minister, and likely also have a bilateral with Foreign Minister Lavrov. I know there were some questions about that. But just to be clear, in the bilaterals that aren't with the Ukrainians, these are conversations about the discussions they're having, but it's not anyone making decisions about Ukraine when the Ukrainians aren't in the room. As we've said, this is for the people of Ukraine to decide themselves, but he will have these separate conversations. Yes, Ukraine? No, do we? Okay, let's finish Ukraine. Yep.
You are talking about the escalation, but you are generally, the focus was on the movement or mobilization of the forces. But the escalation, the main escalation, as Matt was mentioning, is the issue of the energy and this, like, tightening or trying to suffocate, maybe it's a big word, to Ukrainian economy and everyday life. So anything is going to be taken in that regard, or it's just like wait and see till tomorrow?
No, it's not wait and see. I mean, we've been having the energy conversations for some time now. They happened, some conversations on that issue happened just last week or the week before when folks were in Brussels. We've said very clearly that Russia should not use this as a weapon, and that actually Russia has a lot to lose if they try to do so. We're also going to talk about ways we and the Europeans can work with Ukraine in terms of meeting their energy needs, and that conversation will absolutely continue. I didn't mean to imply that it wasn't a top priority. It is. It's incredibly important to us. It's something we're working on every day. But in terms of the de-escalation, that's part of the whole puzzle of what we need to see Russia do here.
There is another issue related to tomorrow's meeting. It seems that I hope it's not, I assume or it's a wait and see status, which is first the status of put more sanctions or widening the scope of the sanctions.
Yep.
Second thing, which is the possibility or the necessity, let's say, of arming Ukraine, or this is not on the table at all.
Right. Well, we've said that we're not considering lethal assistance to Ukraine at this time. Again, as Jen said, I can't predict what we will or won't rule out, at some point in the hypothetical future, but right now we're not considering lethal assistance. We are looking at non-lethal assistance. We've given some. We're looking at what more we could do on that. Do you have a follow-up on that?
Yes, okay. about I'm trying to figure out or understand what is the wisdom or the explanation of not arming because 2 or 3 weeks ago already it was one of the main issues that's discussed in the NATO meetings and in European, EU and US meetings, that how the size and the efficiency of the armed forces in Ukraine are really shrinking. So do you think that is not a wise decision to make it now?
Well, what we've said is, and the president has said, there's no military solution here. We don't want to see more escalation. What we want is de-escalation. Okay. At the same time, we're constantly reviewing Ukrainian requests for assistance and determining what's most appropriate to provide. And we've said throughout that the Ukrainian government and military has shown incredible restraint in the face of incredible hostility. But we've also said, you've heard Jen say this, that they have a responsibility to maintain order and protect their people. So we'll keep looking at the request. Again, we're not considering lethal assistance at this point. In terms of your question on sanctions, we have additional sanctions prepared. We've talked about them a lot in here. As we said, don't expect any before tomorrow's meeting. But if there are not steps taken by Russia to de-escalate, we will take additional steps, including additional sanctions.
Talking about the escalation as a like target or an aim, how do you justify or how do you explain to me, it's not justify, it's not the right word, how to explain to me the escalation of this all, let's say, I will not say rhetoric, but a lot of words coming out of this podium and other podiums regarding Russia and the fiction of Russia and the fact of America and all these things. You don't think that those type of talks escalate the situation or escalate the atmospherics?
Not at all. I think what we're doing is responding to misinformation and falsehoods that the Russian government is putting forward about its actions. We have a responsibility to not let propaganda that's false stand. I have a responsibility, as do my colleagues, to stand up here and tell the truth about what's happening. We can't let the Russian view of what's happening be the final word on this because it doesn't happen to be what's actually happening on the ground. So we think that's something that's important to do. And what we've said is we want to de-escalate the situation on the ground. We're not focused on words. We're focused on what actions the Russian government is or is not willing to take here to see what the situation will look like going forward. Still on Ukraine. Anything else on Ukraine? Elliot? Oh, go ahead, Elliot, and then Matt.
So the way Jen said it yesterday kind of made it sound like if the meetings don't go well tomorrow, then we can expect additional sanctions. Is that the case?
Well, I wouldn't put it all in this meeting, right? This isn't sort of the whole ball game. This isn't the end-all, be-all. Russia needs to take steps to de-escalate in order to prevent additional sanctions from being levied on them. Mm-hmm. Now, we hope, obviously, coming out of this kind of diplomatic meeting, we can see some of those steps. But I wouldn't say, we have the clock ready, second their wheels up to do that. But this is an important diplomatic step. It's not everything. As I said, I think before you came in, we're going to have a bilateral likely with Foreign Minister Lavrov, with the Ukrainians, and with the EU. So we're going to have these conversations. But I wouldn't look at this as the end-all, be-all necessarily.
Sure. Okay, thanks. And then I apologize, I did come in a little late. So
okay.
if you already
I know you're all the way in the back.
Yeah, sorry.
No one wants to sit up front today.
But I did want to ask about this Donald Cook incident in the Black Sea. Has the U.S. launched a protest against the...
So it is my understanding that the Department of Defense actually will be taking the lead on diplomatic response to this.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's actually happened yet. It's my understanding it will be.
Is that how it generally goes? Does the DoD...
That's my understanding. Obviously, we have different diplomatic mechanisms to communicate with countries, and it's my understanding that's how this message is being sent. I'm not sure there's anything typical about anything that's happening here.
The Pentagon said that the State Department will take up the issue.
Yeah, I know.
will be taking up the issue with the Russians.
I've talked to my colleagues at the Department of Defense, and we're all trying to figure out how we're responding, and the latest I have from them is that the Department of Defense will be responding, obviously in close coordination with us, but I think we were trying to figure out the mechanism through which to do that.
But would Secretary be taking up the issue when he meets...
I'm not sure. I don't have anything to preview specifically about his conversation. We'll see if it comes up.
And how best do you describe your relationship with Russia right now?
Stellar.
I think it's complicated. I think that there are still places we work together. We were in Vienna a week and a half ago for the P5+1 EU talks on Iran, and it was business as usual. But that's because it's something the Russians care about. Preventing a nuclear-armed Iran is something we care about. On Syria CW, we've reached, I think, now 65 or 70% of the stuff being taken out of Syria. We're working with the Russians on that. But I don't think anyone would be surprised that the events of the last weeks and months have really been hard for the relationship, and that's why we've made very clear that this action can't stand and that we will continue to take steps against Russia if they continue this activity. But it's a complicated relationship. Not stellar as Matt's.
Well, I was being sarcastic.
I know.
You mentioned in a response to someone earlier that you can't let the Russian view be the last word, and that's why you... It's the administration's position that the Russian view is not an interpretation of facts on the ground, but a just blatant distortion.
I was talking about the propaganda. I'm not necessarily talking about the view they put forward in diplomatic settings.
Right, but what they're saying, what they're putting out on social media or whatever, and press releases and that kind of thing, you don't view as their interpretation of facts on the ground. Rather, you view it as a distortion and a lie.
Well, it may be their view, but it also is a distortion.
Then it's incorrect. It is just not factual.
Well, I don't want to say every single word they've said about everything, but in general, the narrative they are propagating about what's happening there is not in line with what we think is the reality there.
Well,
Correct.
what you think is the reality or what actually is the reality. Because this is what I'm trying to get at. Your position is that what the U.S. government is saying about the situation on the ground in Ukraine is factual, without
Correct.
any distortion.
And
what
in part because
and
that's
what-
based on what the Ukrainians themselves are saying about
Right.
what's happening in their country.
And what the Russians are saying about the situation on the ground
Is a
in
distortion
Ukraine
of reality.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Let me ask you specifically
Yep.
on something we've been hearing, not just once now, but Russia is saying that Ukraine is on the brink of civil war. Is that something you view as a distortion?
Yes, and I would say in response to that that any destabilization that's going on inside Ukraine right now is a direct result of Russian action there. So it's ironic to me that they seem concerned about the stability of Ukraine when they're the ones trying to destabilize massive parts of it.
Right, but if we are to accept your line that what you say is correct and everything the Russians are saying is false.
I didn't
or
say
most-
everything.
well,
I said the narrative.
But when they say that Ukraine is on the brink of civil war, even if they're responsible for it being on the brink of civil war,
I wouldn't say they're on the
not-
brink of civil war.
Even
I said
with-
destabilization.
Even with even with all the Russian destabilization and provocation, you do not believe the administration does not see Ukraine as on the brink of.
I haven't heard anyone use that term.
Well, but if you look at what a civil war is, it's like one sector of the population fighting another, presumably, or often the government in itself. And are you saying that all of the people that are fighting against the Ukrainian government are not Ukrainian but Russian?
No, I didn't say that. I said Russia's fomenting instability in parts of
They
Ukraine.
could. I mean, certainly you can foment. Someone can foment a civil war. That isn't
Again,
necessarily
I haven't
one of
heard
the
that term
parties.
used. I'm happy to check with our folks. I know there's a definition of it. I just haven't heard that term used. Ukraine, anything else? Samir, yes.
Will Special Envoy to Syria, Mr. Rubenstein, travel to the
Excuse me, I'm
Bless you.
sorry.
travel to the Middle East after his meetings in Geneva?
I haven't heard that he has onward travel. I'm happy to check on his schedule. I just haven't heard that he has onward travel. I think he may. He's been doing a lot of traveling, so let me check.
Excuse me, what's the purpose of him being to meet Lavrov?
No, the secretary tomorrow, as I said, will be meeting with Special Envoy Rubenstein with Special Joint Representative Brahimi in Geneva to talk about the diplomatic process on Syria. So he's joining that meeting.
And you
To my knowledge, he's not joining Ukraine meetings.
Okay, in mentioning still about the relation and it's complicated with Russia, you mentioned their role in Syria and chemical weapon. What is the latest about that?
On chemical weapons?
Yes.
So I think we're either at 65 or maybe even up to 70% of the chemical weapons have now been shipped out of the country.
So within 1 week, which was the last week when Secretary Kerry was talking about 54, now become 70?
Yep, I know there's been some movement on the ground. Obviously, the OPCW will be the one announcing as they have reached milestones, but it's my understanding there's been some activity on the ground.
And were you able to confirm reports about the use of chemical weapons
No,
last weekend?
we still can't corroborate them. We're obviously looking into it, but we can't corroborate those claims.
Excuse me, regarding this chemical weapon, I know that you are not the side of deciding or explaining to us everything related to this. What's your understanding? Because it was before, it is like now it's 70%, and the plan was announced even not approved, at least announced by this podium, that it's by the end of June everything will be finished.
Yeah.
I assume so. And what is the United States' role in this issue? In particular, it's like related to the shipment of or destroying the weapon?
Let me see if I have that in here. I know there are a number of different countries, and let me just check on this. I may not, though. A number of different countries that are contributing to the CW destruction effort.
Okay.
As we've talked about, we do have some assets in the region that are helping. So let me see. Actually, once the chemicals are brought, and I think this is still accurate, to the port of Latakia, they are loaded onto Danish and Norwegian ships. After they're removed from Syria, the chemicals will be transported to an Italian port. Well, they will then be transloaded onto a U.S. vessel, the MV Cape Ray, which we've talked publicly about. They'll be neutralized at sea, which we will do on that ship. So that's our role in it. Obviously, also talking to the Russians about pushing the regime to make progress. We have a diplomatic role as well.
So just a question, I don't know if you have the answer. It's a little bit technical usually, but asked in these cases when this type of weapons are, destroyed or
Neutralized, destroyed.
neutralized, whatever. Is there a place it's going to be dumped or not?
Let me see. There are a couple different priority levels of chemicals that they have in Syria. I think the neutralization byproduct from the MV Cape will be transported, I think, for disposal facilities in the United Kingdom, Germany, and at some commercial facilities in the U.S. and Finland. So obviously, once we've gone through the neutralization process.
So it's going to be distributed at this place.
A number of different. This is actually a great example of a number of different countries pitching in and helping out to get this done, because we think we're still on track if people hold their commitments to doing this by the end of June.
Okay.
Yeah. Middle East.
Yeah, there seem to be some conflicting reports in the region today about Ambassador Indyk and what he is doing or not doing. Can you give us the rundown on that?
So the parties themselves have been meeting regularly to try to achieve an agreement to extend the negotiations. The bottom line is both parties tell us they want negotiations to continue and are searching for a path to do that. The U.S. Is continuing to play the role of facilitator and to support the two sides as they try to reach an agreement. To that end, Ambassador Indyk and his team are traveling to the region today after consultations with Secretary Kerry to resume their role as facilitators. As we've said throughout, we won't be giving daily readouts of their efforts, of meetings, of specifics, but they are headed back there today.
Okay. And then with the eye toward getting an extension.
And really, again,
So have we now dropped the, pretense is a loaded term, but
it's never stopped you before.
well, right, but it's now impossible, is it not, for there to be a deal by the end of April?
We're focused on extending the negotiations.
All right.
And one thing that I want to stress here is that the parties have been meeting regularly and that we are serving as facilitators, but as we've said now for several weeks, it's really up to the parties to make the decisions now.
But there's two kinds of deals, right? There's the
Well, I mean, I don't think anyone's even talking about a peace deal in the true sense of the word, but we're talking about a framework agreement, and then we're talking about there was some kind of interim deal that would be an agreement between the two parties to extend.
We're talking
So-
about an agreement to extend the negotiations.
So that would have things that each side would have to do in order for you to agree. It's not just like we both say agree. So you are still working on some kind of
Well, the two parties
maybe
are
the
working
word deal
together.
is too big, but
An agreement to extend the negotiations. What that looks like, I don't have any details for you on. They've been working on it together. We'll be going back and serving as facilitators.
So I try to understand, I mean, so today, Ambassador Indyk and whoever are going back to be sure that they are continuing,
To serve as facilitators.
and then is there any envisioning of any kind of framework or any kind of mechanism by which it can be continued beyond April 29th?
Well, that's what we're trying. Right now, the two parties are meeting to try to achieve an agreement to extend the negotiation. So, speaking exactly to that.
The other day, Monday, I asked Jen about two people who had been detained by the Israelis. I recognize that it's not, with Passover and everything, it's not easy to get information out of Israel, but I'm just wondering if there are any updates on these two. One is an American citizen.
I'm sorry, I don't have any updates on them, Matt. I'm sorry about that. Let me see if our team does.
Okay, do you,
I am sorry about that. Let me see what I can do.
well, I believe that you're sorry about it.
I know.
I just wanted to make sure. Do you know if anyone was looking into it
I think they were. yes.
after Monday?
We always look into questions when you ask them.
Okay, all right, thank you.
What else on Middle East, please? Anything?
So the framework is a hopeless case now?
I'm not saying that. Are you filling in for Saeed today? That was a very Saeed-like question. What we're focused on is facilitating between the two parties to see if they can make tough decisions to extend the negotiation.
I've got an Iran.
Oh wait, I think we have another Middle East
the
piece.
framework agreement.
Just to extend them.
So now you just want to
extend them and talk in perpetuity for nothing. I mean, presumably.
No,
if
that's
you,
not what I'm saying.
So, but presumably, if you are looking to extend the negotiations, it's with
with a goal in mind.
What
Yes.
is the goal?
Well, I'm not going to get into details about that. What we're focused on, what the goal is right now, is what I outlined.
So you can't even say that you still have a goal of a framework
We
agreement?
still have a goal of a lasting peace agreement that addresses all issues between the two parties. That's our goal. That's always been our goal. How we get there, we're focused right now on the next step, which is seeing if we can get agreement on extended
Well,
administration.
but then it seems as if you've dropped the idea of a framework agreement.
I'm just saying what we're focused on now in these next set of meetings. Yeah.
From the meeting today, is it your understanding that that's been pushed back, or is that still happening? Are they waiting for Ambassador Indyk?
I've seen some of the press reports. We're not going to confirm individual meetings or when or why. Or I know it's frustrating.
When will be back to the
Ambassador
region?
Indyk, he's returning with his team today.
Today.
Can I go to Iran
You
for a
can.
second? This has to do with this UN host committee
Uh-huh.
meeting. What is, if it hasn't happened already, can you outline what it is that you expect to come out of this meeting? I mean, this committee appears to be one of the, and this is saying a lot for the UN, one of the more useless committees at the UN. It appears to have produced its last report about 5 years ago, and nothing since then, and it seems to be mainly preoccupied with listening to the complaints of foreign missions about parking tickets that they have accrued over the years in the streets of New York. Can you tell us what the U.S. expects to come out of this?
I don't have any predictions to make about what may come out of the meeting.
Well,
They can speak about their process and how it will move forward. As I said, we take, as Jenna said, as I've said as well, we take our host country obligations very seriously. That's why cases like this are so rare. We're happy to have a conversation about why we won't be granting this visa with the UN, as we have already. We've also had them with the Iranians, and I don't want to speak for their process.
No, I understand that, but I mean, when this meeting is going to happen, and you're a member of this committee, and presumably you're going to go in, and I just want to know if you're going to say anything to this committee that is different than what you've said publicly about this situation.
I don't have any more details on what we'll say. I assume, as we've said publicly, that we will make the case for why we won't be granting this visa. As Jen said yesterday, it's not appropriate for Iran to nominate someone to be their permanent representative to live in the United States who was involved with such searing events in U.S. history.
Syrian event?
Searing.
Oh, searing.
Searing.
It's not appropriate for them
To nominate him, or is it not appropriate for him to serve in the United States?
It's not appropriate for us to grant him a visa, so we won't be granting a visa.
But do you have any reason to believe that they did this as a provocative gesture, or you thought that they thought enough time had passed? I mean,
I honestly don't know what their motivations were, and I don't want to guess at them. What we've said is we want to move past it. And we've made our position clear, and we won't be granting the visa, and hope that the Iranians can move past it as well.
Can you outline for us why is it that you're able to speak about not granting this visa if all visa records are confidential? Is it because an application was never received? I don't think that's the case. I'm not speaking actually about our legal underpinnings for why we're not doing that. There are some things we can't talk about because of visa confidentiality. But you could, well, you're saying you're not going to grant a visa, which means that.
Right.
So how is that
they've
permissible
talked about
under
not
the?
granting.
There are different circumstances under which we can talk about
Okay.
whether or not we will grant a
And the reason that
visa.
you're able to do it in this case?
Because we've made a decision that it's important. He has made his application public. So once people talk
Okay.
publicly about their own applications, we can then talk about them as
Okay.
well.
All the time?
Thank you for putting that on the record.
Yes,
because the next
thank
time
you.
it comes up, you're gonna.
Well,
it's gonna be
hopefully I won't
interesting
be
to
here
see.
and someone else can deal with the precedent I just set. No, but in general, there are a few exceptions to when we can. The biggest of which is when somebody's already made a visa, when they've already publicly talked about their case or their application. Obviously, we think confidentiality is important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait, I think there are a few more.
I mean, this committee, when it is formed, I mean, the main purpose, it seems that beside discussing, is challenging your decision, right? Or you don't know what they are meeting?
I'll let them speak about their purview and what they are going to discuss. Anything else? Samir? Yes?
Do you have a reaction to the resignation of Prince Bandar bin Sultan as
I
head of
don't.
intelligence?
I don't. We obviously work with Prince Bandar quite closely. I'm sure we'll work with whoever replaces him. I know his deputy, I think, is replacing him for now. Don't have more analysis than that. Catherine?
Marie, have you, the administration, the intel community, seen this new Al Qaeda video? Do you have any comment generally on that? And then also, there's been some talk, I guess, by experts that this was potentially a missed opportunity for the United States
To do what?
to conduct a drone strike?
A couple points on the video. Look, the first is that it's in no way breaking news that AQAP is a significant threat to the United States, the people of Yemen, to other people in the region and around the world. I mean, since 2009, we've seen them try to attack the homeland with several attempts. And they've clearly carried out a number of attacks inside Yemen. We work very closely with the government of Yemen to arrest operatives, to put pressure on AQAP. A couple other points. I think this video actually was fairly unusual in some ways for AQAP. It highlights the leader, Mr. Wahishi, who I think there are a couple of interesting points, one of which is that in addition to being the head of AQAP, he's the number 2 now of Al-Qaeda Core, which speaks to some of the points we've talked about with Al-Qaeda Core, that they're increasingly decentralized. As we've had success in Afghanistan and Pakistan, they've really looked to their affiliates, which is why we've been increasingly concerned about their affiliates. So I think that speaks to some of the things we've talked about Al-Qaeda in general.
What about, what is this?
The fact that there were like 100 operatives out in plain sight, pretty much. What does that video tell you about how much stronger and emboldened AQAP is right now?
You know, I don't think we can make generalizations about their strength based on one video, quite frankly. We know they've been gaining in strength. We have been increasingly concerned about them, as I said, since 2009. That's why we've worked increasingly to counter the threat from AQAP in a variety of different ways. So I don't think this increases our concern because, quite frankly, our concern was already incredibly high. If folks remember, as recently as I think August of last year, we actually temporarily suspended operations at our embassy in Sana'a based, again, on a credible threat stemming from AQAP. So it's something we have taken very seriously for a very long time.
And how much of a specific concern is their well-known effort to build bombs that could make it past airport security?
Well, it's been a concern for a long time. If we look at some of the printer cartridge bombs, we look at the underwear bomber, if we look at others, we know they have tried, some of the attacks they've tried to undertake inside Saudi Arabia, they have tried to build explosives that can get around security. We've been concerned about that for many years now, are taking steps by working with the Yemenis, other countries around the world, to counter that threat, but we know they're interested in doing it. That's why we take it so seriously.
Yes, please, in the same region, but in Libya, I mean, yesterday you released a statement related to the ambassador, the Jordanian ambassador, and in general, in the last few days, a lot of unrest or let's say uncertainty is going on in Libya. How do you read this situation in Libya, especially there is an embassy there, there is other things going on with Libya?
Well, we've said that we will work closely with the government as it builds its own capacity to improve security in its country. We know there are challenges there. We know that they have tried very hard and made progress since the historic events that took place there to improve the security situation. We're helping them, but the goal obviously is for them to be able to build their capacity, which is what they're doing. It doesn't mean we're not concerned about it still.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.